They told you sex was something to be ashamed of, that it was dirty, sinful, or maybe they told you it meant nothing at all, just a physical urge to be scratched, nothing sacred, nothing significant. But what if they were wrong? What if everything you've ever been told about sex was designed to disconnect you from one of the most powerful spiritual forces you'll ever experience? From the moment you were curious enough to ask questions, the answers were wrapped in guilt and fear or coded in sarcasm and silence. You were taught to see sex as something dangerous to avoid or something meaningless to consume, but never as something to honor, never as something sacred, never as something that could awaken you. And deep down, you knew something wasn't right. You felt it. You sensed it even if you didn't have the words. You saw the contradiction, how something so powerful, so magnetic, was spoken about in whispers or turned into a joke. You felt that void not just in the act itself, but in how the world treated it, because sex is not separate from spirit. It's energy, it's memory, it's alchemy. And when it's approached with awareness, it becomes a doorway to the deepest parts of your being, parts that no religion, no school, no system of control ever wanted you to fully access. You see, from the moment you became aware of your own body, someone else was already shaping how you should feel about it. Before you even understood desire or energy or connection, the script was already written. It told you what sex was, what it wasn't, who was allowed to enjoy it, who should be ashamed of it, and why you should keep it locked in a box of secrecy, guilt, or superficial pleasure. At home and school, through media and religion, even in the subtle glances of adults who themselves were conditioned by generations of silence, you were handed a framework. One built not to liberate you, but to contain you. Some were taught that sex is dangerous, others were told it's just a game, but few were shown that it can be divine, that it can be a sacred expression of life force and energetic union of soul and body, a tool for healing, awakening, and deep remembrance. As a child, you were open, curious, present, energetically in tune, but that openness made you vulnerable, not just to influence, but to distortion. You were slowly taught to disconnect the physical from the spiritual, to separate lust from love, pleasure from purity, to compartmentalize your wholeness into categories that don't even make sense when you feel them in your bones. The programming didn't always come with bad intent. In many families, it came from fear, from generations of people who never got to heal, who were handed shame and passed it down without even realizing it. But regardless of how it arrived, the message was the same: hide your sexuality, mistrust it, use it or deny it, but don't ever revere it. Because sacred sexuality is powerful, and a person who knows how to channel that power is hard to control. When someone begins to understand the spiritual dimension of their sexual energy, they start to remember who they are. They stop accepting the story they've been given. They start asking questions that go beyond surface-level answers. And that makes them dangerous to the systems built on fear, repression, and disconnection. Ancient civilizations understood this. Long before modern society reduced sex to something shallow or shameful, many cultures saw it for what it truly is: a portal, a ceremony, a merging of energies that could unlock creativity, vitality, healing, and enlightenment. In Tantra, sex was a sacred practice, a way to balance masculine and feminine energies, both within the self and with another. It wasn't about performance, it was about presence. In Taoist traditions, sexual energy was cultivated and circulated to nourish life force, to strengthen the body, and to expand consciousness. In the Egyptian and Hermetic schools, sexual union was a form of energetic transmutation, a means of aligning with divine intelligence. This wasn't mythology, it was wisdom. But that wisdom was buried. Over time, these teachings were mocked, erased, twisted into taboo, or sold back to us in distorted fragments. And in their place, we were given two options: suppression or superficiality. We were told to either fear sex or use it like currency. Never to understand it, never to honor it, because when sex becomes shallow, we become disconnected. And disconnected people are easier to manipulate. When sexuality is cut off from spirit, it becomes a distraction. You're left chasing temporary stimulation while starving for real connection. You're sold the idea of intimacy, but denied the tools to actually feel it. The result A world obsessed with sex but terrified of intimacy, flooded with hypersexual images but lacking sacredness, addicted to stimulation yet devoid of meaning, and somewhere inside, you know it's not supposed to be this way. Some truths are too deep to fully explore on platforms like this. That's why we created Insights Academy, our free newsletter, where we go beyond the surface. Sign up through the link in the description and get a free copy of the Kybalion, one of the most powerful texts on universal law. Because the real danger isn't sex, it's the forgetting of what sex truly is. Sexual energy, when misused or denied, becomes a tool of distraction and control. It's used to sell you things, to keep you craving, to keep you looking outside yourself. But when you reclaim that energy, when you approach it with reverence and presence, it becomes a current of truth, a force that reconnects you to your soul. It can't be explained in data, it has to be felt. And once you feel it, once you experience sex, not just as an act, but as a spiritual portal, you begin to realize how much has been stolen, how much you've been taught to unlearn. And you start asking, if everything I was told about sex was incomplete, what else have I missed? What happens when you stop treating sex like a problem to manage or a prize to chase and start treating it like a doorway to your deepest truth? What might awaken in you, not just physically, but emotionally, energetically, spiritually, when you finally allow yourself to feel it all. The programming runs deep, but the truth runs deeper. And the fact that you're here listening, questioning, that's not an accident. That's your soul remembering. They told you sex was just biology, a function of hormones, instincts, and primal urges. Maybe they told you it was about love or maybe about pleasure, but no one told you what it really was. No one told you it was energy, raw, intelligent, transformative energy. The kind of energy that can unlock levels of your being that most people will never touch, not because they can't, but because they've been taught not to. You felt it even if you didn't know what to call it. That subtle vibration before climax, the way your skin tingles with memory, the electric pull between two people who haven't even touched. That isn't just chemistry, it's frequency, it's chai, it's prana, it's kundalini. Cultures all over the world gave it different names, but they were all pointing to the same thing. Sexual energy is life force, the same energy that created you, the same energy that can heal you, awaken you, and completely rewire your reality if you learn how to work with it. But you weren't taught to cultivate it. You were taught to waste it, to suppress it, to seek it mindlessly or hide it completely. You were handed scripts that said, this was something to get rid of, something to indulge in recklessly or feel guilty about, never something to sit with, never something to circulate, never something to honor. So instead of rising through your body, awakening your heart, opening your throat, activating your crown, this sacred energy gets stuck, numbed, disconnected, and what could have been a source of power becomes a cycle of craving and confusion. Because the truth is, you were never just a body. You are an energy system, an instrument made of frequencies and flows, and sexual energy, when held with intention, becomes a sacred fire. One that burns through blockages, one that softens the parts of you the world tried to harden, one that brings you back to your intuition, to your clarity, to your presence. This is why ancient traditions treated sex with such reverence, because they knew. They knew that when two people come together consciously, it becomes something far more than just a moment of pleasure. It becomes a ritual, a transformation, a homecoming. The breath becomes a bridge, eye contact becomes transmission. Sound becomes a vibration, and you're no longer just touching a body, you're touching a soul, a lineage, a story, a universe. But when you do this unconsciously, it can leave you confused, fragmented, drained. Because sex is not just sensation, it's exchange, it's transfer, and every exchange leaves an imprint. You've felt it before, that strange heaviness after being with someone who wasn't aligned, that foggy energy that lingers, that invisible pull to a person you thought you moved on from. That's not weakness, that's wiring. Because energy doesn't forget. What most people call chemistry is actually resonance, your field recognizing theirs. And when there's alignment, it feels magnetic, undeniable. But if the energy behind that attraction is unresolved, full of pain, shame, or trauma, that magnetism turns chaotic, fast. And this is why so many people confuse chaos for passion, because they've never been shown what real energetic alignment feels like. They've only known intensity, not intimacy. You aren't just reacting to a person, you're responding to a vibrational pattern, one that your body remembers even if your mind doesn't. So when you merge with someone, you aren't just connecting with their body, you're inviting in their story, their desires, their trauma, their energy, and they're inviting in yours. That's why this isn't just casual. Not because it's bad, but because it's sacred, and sacred things aren't light. They leave echoes. When you see sex through this lens, everything changes. The goal is no longer release, it becomes connection. You stop asking, did I perform well? And start asking, what are we co-creating? You stop leaking energy. You stop carrying what isn't yours. You stop confusing stimulation with depth or chemistry with truth. Instead, you start reclaiming your body, your choices, your vibration. You begin to heal not by avoiding intimacy, but by approaching it with presence. And as you reclaim your energy, something powerful happens. You become magnetic, not because you're trying to attract, but because you're aligned. You no longer chase, you draw in, and what you draw in reflects your truth. Real sex, sacred sex isn't a transaction, it's a transformation. It's not about how skilled you are, it's about how present you are. It's not about how loud or long it lasts. It's about how true it feels in your nervous system and your soul. And yes, there will be resistance, because centuries of shame don't unravel overnight. You'll feel guilt, you'll feel fear. That's okay. That's not a sign you're doing something wrong. That's a sign you're touching the edge of the lie. You're pressing into the membrane of the programming. And on the other side of that resistance is truth. This isn't about celibacy, and it's not about indulgence. It's about consciousness. You don't need to stop having sex. You need to start having real sex, embodied sex, honest sex, sex that is a mirror and a meditation, sex that brings you into your body, not out of it. And once you feel it, once you experience what it's like to merge with someone energetically, spiritually, emotionally, you'll never again settle for fragments. You'll stop entertaining the numbness. You'll stop calling distraction connection, because you'll know what it means to be seen, not just touched, to be moved, not just stimulated, to be remembered, not just wanted. And in that remembrance, something inside you shifts. You stop treating your body like a performance tool. You start treating it like a sacred vessel. You stop chasing highs. You start chasing wholeness. And you begin to understand sex isn't an escape, it's a homecoming. You've been taught to give your body but not your energy, to perform but not to feel, to chase climax, not connection. And in that cycle, something sacred has been lost. But you can feel it now, can't you? That quiet knowing rising inside you, the sense that sex was never meant to be hollow, that your body is more than a machine, that your desire isn't a problem, but a portal. Because deep down, you remember what it's like to be touched beyond skin, to feel presence instead of pressure, to dissolve into a moment so fully you forget where you end and the other begins. And in that moment, something cracks open. A deeper version of you wakes up, not the version obsessed with control or validation, but the one that simply is, a being in flow, in truth, in union. That's what sacred sexuality is, not a fantasy, not a performance, but a return to what intimacy was always meant to be: an energetic communion, a mirror of your wholeness, a reminder that you were never meant to split body from soul. When two people meet from that space, not from emptiness, but from awareness, something new emerges, something ancient, something bigger than either of them. It's what some traditions call the third energy, not yours, not theirs, but what's created between you. It's the divine spark, the presence that enters the room when two souls are fully awake, fully open, fully present. When the body becomes a vessel, when sound becomes prayer, when breath becomes the rhythm of creation itself. As this energy doesn't come from performance, it comes from presence. It doesn't rise in chaos, it rises in clarity. It doesn't demand perfection, it invites honesty, and it begins with you, not with a partner, not with technique, but with your willingness to feel fully, truthfully, without rushing, to slow down enough to ask, is this desire or distraction? Is this chemistry or trauma? Am I being pulled toward connection or pulled away from myself? Those questions are the gateway, because when you answer honestly, your entire relationship with sex begins to shift. You stop settling, you stop performing, you stop using sex to avoid yourself, and you start using it to meet yourself more deeply than ever before. Sex becomes meditation, a way to listen, to breathe, to dissolve the layers of who you think you're supposed to be and step into who you truly are. Because the truth is, your body has always known the way home, the heat that rises, the pulse that builds, the subtle tingling along your spine. These are not just physical sensations, they are messages, reminders. Your body remembers what your mind forgot. And when you stop rushing, when you stop numbing, when you stop chasing those memories, return. You begin to feel your own energy moving. You begin to feel the wisdom of your skin, your breath, your heartbeat. And from that space, your energy clears. Your intuition sharpens. Your boundaries strengthen. You stop leaking power and start holding it. And holding that power is magnetic, not in a manipulative way, not in a performative way, but in a grounded, embodied, sovereign way. You stop trying to be chosen. You start choosing, not from ego, but from presence, not from fear, but from truth. And you begin attracting partnerships that reflect your wholeness, not your wounds. Because the people you call in from that frequency, they don't want your performance. They want your presence. They don't want your mask. They want your essence. They don't want to conquer you. They want to meet you fully, consciously, sacredly. But that kind of meeting only becomes possible when you've already met yourself. So ask yourself, what if sex isn't something to give away? What if it's something to share with intention? What if it's not the end goal, but the beginning of a deeper conversation, one between your body and your soul, one that whispers, welcome back. You've been gone too long. This isn't about denying your desire. It's about awakening it to its highest potential. It's not about rules or restrictions. It's about reverence. It's about seeing sex not as something you do, but something you become when all of you is allowed to show up. Because when sex is sacred, it changes you, it softens you, it expands you, it dissolves your illusions, it heals your nervous system, it brings you into the present more powerfully than any mantra ever could. That's why they never taught you this, because a sexually awakened being is harder to control. They're sovereign, centered, discerning. They don't settle, they don't perform, they don't forget who they are. They become light in a world obsessed with shadow. And that's what you're remembering now. Not just how to have sex, but how to hold it. Not just how to seek pleasure, but how to feel it. Not just how to connect, but how to create, heal, and awaken through it. Sex is not the distraction, it's the key, and it's been waiting for you all along.